specialist at Children's Hospital at Erlanger, and today I'm with Mackenzie at the Tennessee Aquarium, hanging out with some of the turtles. And Mackenzie, can you tell me where we are right now?
Yes. So my name is Mackenzie. I'm one of the herpetologists here at the aquarium, which just means I'm a biologist that works specifically with reptiles and amphibians. And so what we are looking at right now is actually our turtle nursery, which means it's a room full of baby turtles. How much better can you get than that?
That is awesome. So how many baby turtles do you guys have in here?
Ooh, quite a few. Probably around 30 in this entire room.
Gotcha. They're all babies in here?
Babies and juveniles. Juveniles just means they're not grown animals, but they're not really tiny little babies just yet either, or at this time either.
What do these kind of turtles eat? What do baby turtles eat? Do baby turtles eat the same thing as grown-up turtles, or?
They do, just smaller versions, and it depends on kind of where they're found, what food's available to them in their natural habitat, and so forth. For most of the turtles that you see in this room, and most turtles even in general, they're actually omnivores, which means first that they eat both vegetation and meaty type items. So some of the meat type things that we feed on here are actually baby mice. We feed them mealworms, superworms, different beetle larvae, crickets, and they'll get some different types of high protein pelleted diets. Some of them will eat salads because we do have some herbivores in here, which just means, of course, that they're going to eat different types of vegetation specifically. And then we do have carnivores that eat just the meat stuff.
So I see most of them have water in there. Do all turtles like to swim?
So that's a good question. No, not all turtles do like to swim. Matter of fact, tortoises are a group of turtles that live on the land. So if we were to take a look at some of those, we can look at our Burmese star tortoise friends right here. They're adorable little guys. Those are some juveniles. And the Burmese star tortoise definitely loves the land. They do get out of the water. They do get into the water. We do soak them 1 to 2 times during the week, and that kind of stimulates them to go to the bathroom. It helps them to stay hydrated. But they don't need water all the time like some of these aquatic turtles do. And aquatic just means, of course, they live in the water most of the time. Some of these are semi-aquatic turtles, like the keeled box turtle here. And that just means that they're going to live in the water part of the time. Here we go. Let's take an even closer look at one of our keeled box turtle friends. They're very inquisitive little guys, and these guys do eat mice. They have little pieces of grapes, blueberries, mealworms, just kind of a variety, and they're an omnivore, so they're going to eat a variety of different types of food. You can see he's got dirty little feet right now from his substrate where he's been digging down some plant material and things like that. He's got beautiful, kind of orangey colored eyes for this particular individual. Their eye color can vary for individuals for this particular species.
He's so cute.
He's gonna come out and say hi a little bit more. There we go. Now they're called the keeled box turtle because of these 3 raised lines that are right here. They're also commonly known as the jagged shelled box turtle, and that's just because of the way that their shape is shelled with all those kind of zigzags or jagged points there on the back of the shell too.
So turtles come from eggs, right?
That's true.
So how many eggs does a mommy turtle lay?
So mommy turtles can lay anywhere from 1 egg to over 100 eggs, depending on the species, the size of that particular turtle, etc.
So do they stay with their mommies when they're born, or do they typically just kind of do their own thing?
They typically do their own thing. Their mommies are kind of just there to, lay the eggs and then kind of dig up or cover up the eggs, and then they kind of move on from there. They don't really stay with their offspring, like a lot of other animals do.
So I heard that at the aquarium you guys have a lot of these turtles because they're being close to being extinct or they're endangered. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so most of the turtles that you'll see in the turtle nursery are either endangered, critically endangered, vulnerable, threatened. Even some are functionally extinct in the wild. And all that means is just that we're not sure if there's any currently out in their natural populations. So what you'll see here, the ones that you're looking at right now are actually yellow-headed box turtles, and the ones just beside them are the McCord's box turtles as well, the ones right here. And those are both thought to be functionally extinct in the wild. So we're just not really sure how many are still out there. They could be extinct. They could still be a critically endangered status. It hasn't been looked at for quite some time. But either way, their population sizes are definitely not good right now.
Which one is your favorite turtle?
My favorite turtle in here is actually the big-headed turtle. And actually, I'm gonna go grab some gloves and I'll pick him up for you guys, okay? Just 1 second.
I got to hold him and he is fierce.
He is a really cool little animal and he thinks he's way bigger than he is. He's a little mistaken, but that's okay. So this is the big-headed turtle. And he has a really, really long tail. Now you may be wondering, why does he have such that long tail? And that's because in their native habitat, they're gonna climb upstream. And that tail is gonna act kind of like a fifth leg for them. It's gonna help them to be able to climb more efficiently. It's like an extra leg, if you will, to kind of help them to balance as they're going upstream. Now you can see why they have the name big-headed turtle. He does have proportionately quite a large head for his little size. And he kind of acts a little bit like our snapping turtles that we have here in the way that he will kind of snap towards you. He does have a very strong beak, and his head shape is kind of similar to that of the alligator snapping turtle in the way it's kind of triangular shaped.
He has a little tongue that looks like he's sticking it out at us.
He does have that little tongue in there. And as you'll see, his mouth is open, so we can see that turtles don't actually, he makes a little sound, they actually don't have teeth, right? They have a beak kind of like that of a bird, but no teeth, so they can't really chew like we can. They can use that beak to grab onto things and to help them kind of hold it in place. And then oftentimes, if it's too big for them to swallow whole, they'll either, one turtle will get on one side, one turtle will get on the other side. They'll kind of rip it apart and fighting over it.
Like a team almost.
Or, yeah, kind of. More so, hey, that's mine, no, that's mine. Yes. Or they'll take their front 2 feet and kind of rip things apart, or even help them to shove things into their mouth to help them to get it down a little bit better too.
So, do turtles sleep in their shell? Why do they go into their shells?
That is a great question. So turtle shells are actually part of the turtle's body, which most people are like, hey, they kind of do the same thing as a hermit crab, and they'll climb out of their shells when they get too big for their shells and so forth. But that's actually not the case. What happens is when they hatch out of that egg as a tiny little queen-sized animal, they'll already have the shell that they have for their entire life. Wow. So it'll just continue to grow and to get harder and to get longer, so forth, as they continue to grow. And so they do kind of tuck back into the shell for protection for most species. I say that because the snake-necked turtles and so forth can't really bring their heads back in very much. They can kind of tuck to the side. But they do kind of go back into their little shells a little bit to help them to stay protected from things. But most species actually can't go all the way back in the shell. Now we just looked at the keeled box turtle, and it is a type of box turtle, and box turtles can go all the way back into their shell. And the reason why they're called box turtles is for that reason. They can close up like a box.
Wow.
Okay, they have a specialized hinge on the flash down at the bottom of the shell that allows for them to do that. Now let's take a look real quick at him again, just to see different parts of the shell. So the top part here is called the carapace. The bottom part of the shell here, it's always smaller, called the plastron. The two areas that join the two are collectively called the bridge. And then of course we have vertebral scutes, costal scutes, marginal scutes, the nuchal. All the scutes are those individual segments that you find on a turtle shell. And turtle shells are actually made of primarily bone.
Wow.
And then they're covered in a keratin overlayer, which is what our hair, our fingernails, toenails, things like that are made of.
So can they feel their shells?
They can. So oftentimes you'll see funny videos on YouTube and things like that of turtles having water sprayed on their shells. We actually have one of our radiated tortoises with water spraying on its shell, and it's doing a little bit of a dance and enjoying that water because it can quite well fill that on the shell and other parts of its body as well. So really interesting thing about it, just like we can feel when somebody touches our fingernail, same concept for turtles. They can feel what touches their shell. Sometimes if you were to get like a brush out, like a toothbrush or something like that, and let them rub against it, they'll rub against rocks to get a little bit of an itch, or just because they like the feel of it. So it's pretty cool how well they can actually feel that.
That's amazing. Can you tell us one of your favorite tidbits about turtles that people might not know?
Sure. Turtles actually aren't able to vocalize like a lot of other animals. Now, we did hear a little bit of clicking with his snapping. That was just the way his beak was clicking. But they don't have vocal cords like a lot of other animals, so they can't actually, like say a monkey or a cat or a dog, they can't make those interesting sounds. So they can snap and make sounds with their beak a little bit, but they can't necessarily vocalize in the same way that you would find with a lot of other animals.
So why is it important that we keep turtles safe?
That's a great question. So turtles take a long time to the point where they are adult turtles and they become mommies and daddies. So for us to take even one turtle out of their natural habitat is really detrimental to the population or that group of turtles in that same habitat at a given time. So since they take so long to mature, it's really detrimental for us to even remove the one. Especially for the ones that only lay clutches of, just a few eggs.
Egg, yeah.
Right.
So how often can they lay eggs?
So some of them will lay 2 to 3 clutches in a year. Some will only lay 1 clutch a year. Some will lay a clutch every 3 or 4 years. It really just depends on the species, the habitat, different environmental changes, genetics, so forth. There's a lot of different things that kind of go into that.
So how long do turtles live?
So for some species of turtles, they're gonna live 15 to 20 years, like the chicken turtle, give or take. And then for some, they can live over 100 years. A lot of tortoises, like the Burmese star tortoise, can live around, give or take, maybe 70 plus years. So really cool. And if you're wondering about that red stuff on his face, he had a salad that had red pellets in food. So he just got himself a little bit dirty.
So how big will that turtle get?
So he has quite a bit of growing left to do, around this size, give or take. So quite a bit bigger than what we see right now. And of course, if it's a female, it's going to be larger than a male. And I say of course because that's typically the case with turtles and tortoises, is the females are bigger. There are exceptions to that, like the alligator snapping turtle, which is it's actually the biggest freshwater turtle that we have in North America. It's the largest freshwater turtle that we have, of course, here in our building as well, and he's in with the alligators, so if you get to come and see him. He is quite large. He's about 160 pounds, and the big boy is the largest of that. Again, they are an exception to that rule with gender and size differences.
Do you guys name any of your turtles here?
We give some of them names if they're used for outreach. In other words, if they're part of our education department and they're used for that purpose, we do sometimes name them. Most of the animals that we have here at the aquarium we actually don't name. The reason for that is because we don't want to give people the idea that they're our pet animals. They're actually ambassador animals. They're for us to show you guys and teach you guys about them, to help us to protect these guys in their natural habitat by learning what we can do to help them out and how important it is for us to help them out. So in saying that, that's the reason as to why we don't give most of them names, because we don't want people to think that they're really pet animals.
Right, exactly. Because most of these are endangered.
Right, especially in this nursery. There's mostly critically endangered and endangered species here.
So what is the difference between a sea turtle and a turtle like this?
Sure, so most of these turtles are actually freshwater turtles, which means they don't live in saltwater like the oceans. With sea turtles, they do, of course, live in the sea. They do live in the oceans that have salt water. So that's one major thing with them. Another major thing is, unlike with these guys having just pretty regular legs as far as a turtle goes, those guys actually have flippers versus having just the webbed feet that a lot of these other aquatic freshwater turtles will have. Their shells are very different. Their shells are not quite as hard and rough on top. They're more smooth. And they do typically lay larger clutches of eggs and typically live longer as well.
So sea turtles bury their eggs. Do these turtles bury their eggs too?
For most species, there are actually a few species of snake-necked turtles. Some that they're similar to these guys here. These are Rhode Island snake-necked turtles. So there are some that are related to them that actually will lay their eggs in the water.
Wow.
And they will incubate, hatch in the water as well. So that's not very common. But for most turtles, yes, they do go onto the land, they lay their eggs, they cover them up, and they leave.
Wow.
And then they hatch out in about 90 to 120 days, depending on the species.
Can you explain what the difference is between a turtle and a tortoise?
Sure, so turtles are actually kind of collectively all turtles and tortoises together. Most people, when they think of a turtle, they think of water, right? Most turtle species are aquatic or live in the water, at least somewhat. But tortoises are a little bit different in the fact that most of them aren't able to swim. They have a very dome-shaped shell, kind of raised and kind of like a rock, a little bit more so than some of the others. They also have, instead of having the webbed feet or the flippers, so webbed feet like a lot of the aquatic freshwater turtles, flippers like pig-nosed turtles, sea turtles, so forth, they're gonna have elephantine feet, which just means little elephant-like feet. And that helps them to be able to go onto the land on different rough surfaces. They have very rough, thick skin, It's actually harder to give a shot to a tortoise than it is to give it to an aquatic turtle because their skin is so thick, it's harder to get through that. So sometimes you would have to use a larger gauge needle to be able to give them the medicine if they were to get sick.
Thank you so much for teaching me all about these awesome turtles, and just thank you for all the work that you're doing here to help keep and protect all of these endangered species of turtles, and we appreciate it.
Well, thanks for stopping by. Wow, you guys.